Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Thursday, October 8th, and we are talking about last night's vice presidential debate with my old partner and good friend and great journalist, Mark Z. Barabak, longtime national political writer for the LA Times. Thanks for coming, brother.
I'm always happy to do it.
So, going in, before the debate, the conventional wisdom was always vice presidential debates don't matter. But then the conventional wisdom said, but this one does, because the presidential candidates are so old and one of them has COVID. This is really going to be high stakes. But now today, the conventional wisdom seems to be that the new conventional wisdom was wrong. You were underwhelmed by the affair, I take it?
Yes, and I will, if for the record, will state. I mean, look, how do you write a story that says, "Folks, this isn't important. Don't read this story"? But I pretty much did. I didn't advance for the debate, saying, "Look, no vice presidential debate in the whole history of mankind has ever affected a presidential race, and this one's not going to be any different." And it wasn't. We've already moved on. We're already talking about the next debate that's not going to happen, and the governor of Michigan maybe being kidnapped and all this other stuff. So, I mean, look, people who have a stake in. I mean, I tried hard not to dissuade anybody. I didn't say don't watch it, it's a waste of time. But what I think was important to make clear was, look, watch it to learn something, to be entertained or annoyed or aggravated, but don't watch it with this, oh my goodness, this could shake the whole race up and change everything, because it can't, it won't, and it didn't, and it's not.
Did you feel like Pence and Harris, and Pence in particular, were mostly talking to their political base? I mean, by the end of it, Pence was reduced to speaking in Fox News chyrons about, the Hillary Clinton said this, and or did you feel they were trying to make a broader appeal?
Jerry, that's a really interesting question, but I want to talk a minute about this book I'm reading about John Maynard Keynes, which is fascinating because he's not just an economist, but also a sensualist and a philosopher. And right now you're saying, what the hell? How do we get on the subject of John Maynard Keynes and what is a sensualist? My point being, this is exactly what they did last night. You asked about the debate, I talked about John Maynard Keynes. They would ask, so it was, I'm sympathetic with the moderator, but I mean, it really was very frustrating if you were looking for any sort of linearity, if that's a word, any sort of, I'm going to ask you a question and you're going to answer my question, because they didn't. And it was frustrated and it was annoying and maybe it was somewhat amusing, but it was, somewhat typical.
Yeah, in terms of Kamala Harris, not so favorite daughter of California, you really got the sense that the Biden campaign, said just hand off the ball. We're just going to run the ball. Don't try any big plays. Not to lapse into sports metaphor, but just let's play it conservative, because her penchant for drama on the debate stage, and she likes to do that. But I didn't really see anything that was kind of meme worth, except for her expressions, which
yeah. I mean, a few things. Look, let's stick with your metaphor. When you're up by 3 touchdowns and there's the time is running out, what do? You run out the clock, right? So Jerry, I mean, let's stay with it a little further. Biden didn't need a Hail Mary, right? It was, let's just kind of grind it out, run out the clock. Kamala Harris said a couple of things. Look, let's just be honest, because we're adults and we can talk like this. She didn't want to come across as a scary, angry black lady, which she could have, so she was more modulated than perhaps she might have otherwise been. But the other thing too, and I put this in the takeaways. I mean, look, Democrats for a year plus have been drooling about, oh, just wait till Kamala Harris gets on that debate stage, and she was fine. She was good. She was fine. She didn't mop up the floor with Mike Pence. I mean, Mike Pence is a deceptively good debater because he's very low key. He seems very reasonable, and he's willing, with a great deal of force, to say things that are utterly, demonstrably false and not be dissuaded from doing so. And it's very tough to debate someone like that, unless you're going to keep saying, wait, gotcha, give me, right. But he's a very effective debater. I thought one of the most effective things, was from a debating tactic, you notice he made a point of saying what an honor it was to be on stage with her, and what a great, inspiring thing to have a woman of color on the ticket, and thank you so much for your kind words about Melania and the president's COVID diagnosis, which made him seem like a very reasonable, kind, compassionate guy, who then proceeded to
try to rip her face off.
Well, and lied and mislead and just flat out say things that weren't true. He's a very effective debater, one who I would say was underestimated going in.
Yeah. Let's talk about your piece, because one of the things we try to do in the show is sort of newsmakers, people who actually produce the news, how that happens. So the debate ends 7:32 Pacific Daylight Time, and your story arrives in my email box at 8:27, which is 55 minutes. So you haven't lost a step. You've gone grayer than I have, but you're still pretty good at churning it out on deadline. How much of it did you
Yeah.
have? Were you writing as you went along?
Yeah, in fact, you know what? I didn't send out that edition. I actually think we posted the first story maybe 2 or 3 minutes after the debate ended, which is kind of ridiculous. But I wanted to wait because in the first go around we didn't get the fly, right? The whole story of the night was the fly. So I waited until I could get the fly in there before I sent it around on this newsletter, which everyone in Western civilization who wants it, let me know. I'll sign you up. But the point is, so yeah, you know what you do, the way you construct a story like that is you sort of anticipate what may happen. You can write a certain amount of contextual background for here's what we expect going in. Here's the background for these things, and then yeah, it's sort of a, you know, it's a weird thing where you're sort of simultaneously writing, thinking, listening, all at the same time. You're listening to the debate with one ear while you're writing and composing and thinking and putting chunks in, and it's a lot like now that I think about it, it's a lot like having 4 or 5 balls in the air and just trying to keep them all going.
Yeah, well, the takeaway story is sort of a product of obviously of the digital age, but you know the hard thing I still to me is always writing, you know, the lead all on election night because you have to. I mean, on debate night because you have to figure out, you know, what's the single most important thing that happened and how can I explain the debate with that?
Yeah.
Whereas this, you have a little bit of luxury to go to a couple of, you know, different approaches and say this was a highlight, this was a highlight, this was funny, so on. So let's just go through your
Yeah.
takeaways. Number one, you talked about this a little bit. Harris on the case. Democrats have been saying, "Ooh, you know, she's a prosecutor. She's really going to tear their face off," and she didn't do that. She did a perfectly adequate job. I thought her opening was very strong. You know, this is the worst thing that's happened in the history of the universe, or whatever the quote was exactly. But so you think you know that was obviously part of debate prep. Don't come across as too aggressive.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, fairly or not, you know, women are judged differently than men, right? It's the old cliche about, you know, he's forceful and she's strident. I think too, I mean, to be honest, I think there's a different expectation for an African American, for a person of color. And fair or not, you know, you have to deal with those perceptions. So I think she had to be careful and be somewhat modulated. And I think I think she was very effective in that way. I mean, overall, I think she did fine. I don't think she blew anyone away. I don't think it was the greatest debate performance. I thought she did, you know, a good job given what she had to do, but she did have to kind of walk that line. You know, as you suggest, to go back to our, maybe we should use a boxing metaphor or something, but, you know, tie goes the reigning champion. I mean, you know, President Trump needs to change the trajectory of this race. So it was incumbent on Mike Pence to somehow go in and do that. All Kamala Harris had to do was basically make sure that the story the next day wouldn't be a Harris gaffe, something about Biden. You know, the fly did everybody a favor because that was probably the major takeaway of the night. But, you know, so she went in, I mean, let's lapse into sports talk. She did what she had to do, as they say in sports cliche land.
Yeah, but it was interesting because in the presidential debate, which may end up being the only presidential debate, you know, the team Trump sort of talked down Biden so much that the expectations were extraordinarily low, and so he, you know, it was easy for him. In this case, it was interesting because you're right, because Pence has been around a long time, and the expectations were, maybe it was just that they were so high for Kamala that you know everybody figured Pence was just a stiff. But you called your takeaway on him ice, not fire. I thought it was actually a very good night for Pence in terms of making the best case for Trump that could be made. You know, packed with lies and misinformation, of course, but you know, he did a very sober, sturdy job.
I think what Mike Pence did was the president that a lot of people would like to have President Trump be, right? So a president who is caring, who is thousands of people who've developed COVID. I mean, you know, basically Mike, as I said at the beginning, Vice President Pence was not necessarily weighted down by facts, shall we say. He said what, he set out to paint a portrait, a very flattering one of the president, which is no surprise. Kamala Harris tried to do the same with Joe Biden. But he was willing, when necessary, to bend, to a lie, to change, to ignore, and put the best face on things. And I think he did. Again, he was the anti-Trump, if you will. Again, he was very low key, very measured, very modulated. In such a way that
it's already sticking in your ribs before you look down and realize it's there.
Yeah, yeah. And then on, you say COVID front and center, obviously that was the kind of the central issue. You hear me okay? You hearing?
Yeah, my things are going in and out, but I hear, yeah, COVID was the central issue. Yes.
Yeah, COVID,
I don't think it
was
could
the
help
central
this.
issue. And obviously Biden and the Democrats want that to be the central issue. That's what they want to be the criteria of choice for voters. How effective did you feel Pence was in sort of countering, obviously, this huge weight of evidence, which, Harris has on her side in making the case with the China thing, with the from day one, and, we got a vaccine around the corner?
Well, again, at the risk of being like one of the candidates who repeats the same points over and over, I mean, demonstrably, people can quarrel, but demonstrably, empirically, this is a president who has not taken this very seriously, who has sent very, very mixed messages at best on this whole thing. And, the portrait that Mike Pence painted of a resolute president who has been working night and day and relying on the best minds and science and all that sort of stuff is just contravened by the reality. Now he talks about the president's travel ban from China. I could be mistaken, but my understanding is that the first cases that came to the United States came from Europe, not from China. So you could argue over the merits of that travel ban or not. But, Mike Pence set out to make a case, marshaling whatever evidence he could use, real or manufactured. And, he did that over and over. But look, he was in a very, very tough position because, we have what could plausibly be described as a super spreader in the White House. The president has not covered himself in glory as far as his handling of COVID. And that's not me saying that. Let's refer to the polls that show an overwhelming majority of Americans are not happy with the way the president has handled this. So, Mike Pence had a very, very tough job last night. And, I guess we'll switch now to poker and talk about making the best he could of a bad hand.
So, we do have a super spreader in the White House. There was a super spreader event, which was when they tried to change the narrative to the Supreme Court and introducing the new justice nominee or whatever. I thought that Kamala kind of missed a big opportunity there. She never really talked about that, to say, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about? The president of the United States has COVID. His wife has COVID. Was that intentional, that they didn't want to go personal? They thought that there was a risk of personalizing it too much by attacking the COVID in the White House?
Yeah, they might have wanted to tread that line, although, the president made it pretty easy. It's one thing when
in their sick bed being tended by doctors and nurses, another when they're, I don't know how many tweets the president sent out yesterday. Clearly
has been. So I think that made him more fair game, if you will. But, I just think it was interesting because there was a lot in the news yesterday, that could have come up. The president calling his COVID diagnosis a blessing from God, talking about having this drug that is a very, very limited availability, giving everyone in America for free. There was a lot there, but I just think they had a set of points they wanted to stick to, and if possible, get in, get out with as little damage or lingering aftermath or conversation than they could have. In other words, don't make news, just run down the clock and
let the campaign and the narrative move on.
What about her? What about her tactic of saying she wouldn't take the vaccine if Trump said it was okay? Pence had a lot of he was very unctuous at that point, that she was playing politics with I mean, come on, playing.
Look, was that a missed opportunity? Could Kamala Harris have come back and said, "I'm not going to take advice from the guy who wants people to inject bleach"?
Yes.
She could have. And look, I think there is that mindfulness out there. I think, I almost think
of like we run through baseball, we run through football, we run through poker. Maybe now let's talk about horses. And then
You did mention boxing as well. You know.
But look, yes. I think, look, I think a lot of people know and understand President Trump's approach to this. And so did she really need to make that point? I think she could simply say, I trust the doctors and I don't trust Donald Trump. And there'll be a lot of people who know exactly what she was talking about.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This is a digression, but when did it become okay for people to just flat out lie all the time? I mean, we've been doing this a long time. And, back in the 80s and the 90s, I mean, you paid a price for that kind of thing. I mean, you got called out, it became a big story. It did it start with Trump I mean, it's just.
Well, it's funny. Look, when you and I were doing this, remember there was this big innovation where I think it was the Washington Post after a debate published a truth box.
Oh, that was us. That was us in the LA Times in the governor's race in 1990, first truth box.
And truth boxes. And the thing is that you would publish it
in that day's paper, and then it would go away. I mean, now you can do it in real time. You can do it online. You can have it there in perpetuity. I mean, I don't know. Someone would need to do a more firm.
I think it's safe to say that if there was no more derivative business outside Hollywood than politics, right? Blockbuster 1, Blockbuster 2, Blockbuster 3. If someone in politics sees something working, then they're going to copy it. And if they see someone lie and obfuscate and tell mistruths and pay no price, then guess what? It's going to happen. Doing a forensic analysis to find, the sort of the lie would take some doing, but I think we can agree that it's just gotten exponentially worse, and that as more and more people do it and get away with it, you're going to see more and more people do it and try and get away with it.
Hey, do you know this guy Daniel Dale on CNN, their expert fact checker? That guy's amazing. He really
is. He is a machine. He really is truly remarkable. I think it was after the RNC when he just, did this nonstop. I don't even know if he paused for breath. This 3-minute the guy's phenomenal. And
he looks so upset about it. You just know his head's going to explode on live television some night. But he's sort of that's all you can do from a journalistic perspective. What else are you going to do? You put some guy up there and say he lied for these reasons.
It's a very funny sort of thing that we're in. And, I get this in my email constantly, but, if a guy tells 3 lies and someone else tells 30 lies, is it biased to point out that one guy's lied 3 times and the other's lied 30 times? I mean, these are empirical facts, and people, I hear it all the time, fake news and blah, 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 but again, it's false equivalency, and there is no equivalency between someone who fibs or lies or exaggerates 3 times versus the guy who does it 30 or 300 times. And I don't think we in the media should be drawn into that sort of false equivalency, because it's not balanced and it's not responsible reporting. That's not responsible.
Yeah. All right. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, Pence versus Biden, and you referenced the old book of journalistic political writer cliches to say they're trying to make it a choice and not a referendum. You think he succeeded in doing that?
No, short answer. And I mean, yes, it's funny. I wrote that with some hesitation because I've probably written that choice versus referendum construction 500 or 5,000 times in selection. Yeah, but I thought, okay, for those who might just be tuning in, it doesn't hurt. So I sort of, mentioned it in case you've been under a rock and haven't followed the campaign up until last night. But no, I don't think he did. Look, this campaign, I mean, Donald Trump has made this campaign about Donald Trump. There have been so many opportunities. There are so many ways to turn this into a choice and not a referendum. But he simply, by nature of who he is, cannot help but draw attention to himself and make this a referendum on himself. And again, I want to be careful. I'm not making any predictions about the outcome, but time and time and time again. In fact, we just saw this. We just saw there was a column out this morning, a Washington Post columnist who said, "Oh, and obviously this had run it had been written 2 or 3 days earlier. It was just picked up by the paper I was reading, but this gives President Trump an opportunity. This COVID diagnosis, he can show empathy and turn a new leaf, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and make this not about him, but about here we are talking about what him.
Yeah.
Can't help it.
All right, you've been trying to get to it all along. Let's talk about the fly.
Yeah.
I mean, when Linda and I were watching, is that on our set? I'm sure, tens of millions of people. Is that on our set or is that on his head? I mean, it was astonishing how still the fly was.
It really was. I mean, I'm not going to quote myself, but I am. We said, invoking a Lincoln, this may be little noted nor long remembered, the debate, but people are going to talk about the fly. I mean, I have to hand it. There are, Twitter is in many ways truly an abomination, but there are some pretty clever and funny people out there. And of course, right away, there were all these Mike's Fly and all these Twitter accounts. It was pretty darn funny. You got to hand it to the Biden people. They're very quick on the uptake. There's Biden posing with a swatter, and then their truth over fly swatter for $10. The Biden Victory Fund was selling. So, it brought out a lot of levity, and I think we agree. God knows we could all use something to laugh about. So a little comic relief was a good thing.
That was the Mike Pence fly, hashtag Mike Pence fly, was within about an hour accusing another Mike Pence fly of being a fake account, of being a hoax account. This is the real Mike Pence fly. So it was pretty good. So does anybody ask Pence whether he knew it was there or not? Because that was the other thing. I mean, does he have such steely discipline that he didn't just whack the
That he didn't. I don't know. I have not seen that question. He's going to do a campaign event. I'm sure there will be some joking reference to the fly, but that's a good question. I haven't seen him answer that yet.
It might have just been so much hairspray on there that he didn't.
Although,
it out that there actually was a fly that landed on Hillary Clinton during the second debate. People put together this whole gallery of debate.
Which I'd forgotten. The fly landed on Hillary Clinton's lapel during the second debate, and of course, there's that famous thing about Obama, catching a fly during the. So there's a long history of flies and politicians that I don't know. Maybe it's
maybe you should do a piece for tomorrow called 6 Takeaways from the Fly.
There you go. I'll get Jeff Goldblum on the phone. See what he thinks.
All right, Lynn, real quick, a couple of actually substantive things. But I thought she really did not do a good job on the court packing issue, which everybody knows. Yeah. Once the Republicans get Judge Amy on there, it's going to be 6-3, and so the progressive wing of the Democratic Party want to increase the number of justices, which is not really written in stone anywhere. They're going to have to answer that question, aren't they, at some point?
They could. I mean, I think they can kind of keep punting on it, or they can simply say, well, we'll just have to see what happens. Leave it hang. I mean, Biden pretty much said that about the filibuster. I mean, Joe Biden is very much a product of the Senate, and for good or bad, very much reveres the institution. And he's talked about the filibuster and eliminating the filibuster. And there are a lot of, that's another hobby horse of a lot of folks on the left about getting rid of the filibuster. And, Biden has said, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. We'll see if Republicans cooperate. This is on the assumption Biden is elected. We'll see if they cooperate and make a decision then. I could see him basically coming around to the idea or finding a position and say, let's wait and see. But I think they're avoiding it because they don't want to be drawn into a debate. They want to keep it focused on COVID. And any conversation regarding the debate, court packing, filibuster, all that stuff they see as a distraction. So
they're trying to elide the issue. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think I would move a lot of voters.
Just sort of shove that to the side and keep it as focused on Trump and COVID as they can.
All right. And then the last thing is the All Rise Commission on Debates, which I can't believe Frank Fahrenkopf is still, he was old when we were starting out. But anyway, And now they want this to be a virtual debate, the town hall. I don't know how they're going to do that between Trump and Biden, and Trump says he won't go. You have any insights on how that'll play out?
Well, I mean, let's take a step back. They're not doing this because people love Zoom conferences or because they want to punish or reward anyone. The president has not said when he tested positive for COVID, whether he's still positive for COVID. So there is the question of contagion. And, they handled it last night with plexiglass shields and social distancing. But, both Harris and Pence were very, very explicit about having passed a COVID test as recently as Tuesday. The president has not, the president will not. And so there is the genuine question. I mean, does the president get on an airplane, and does the president move around with this potentially deadly disease? I mean, I don't think it's a partisan thing to say that that's not a great idea, to have someone who could be shedding COVID virus in a close quarters with a lot of people coming to the debate, going to the debate,
And
being on a debate stage.
Has been apparently shedding it.
Well, right.
Left
And
at the
so
White House.
there is a very legitimate question in terms of the safety there. And look, I don't think the president is in a great negotiating position. He's the one who needs to change the trajectory of this race. He is the one who needs another debate. He needs something that's going to shake this thing up. Debate could potentially be the opportunity. At the least, it could be a chance to make up for the last debate. If you look at the polls, they show pretty roundly that President Trump was seen as the loser of that debate. His polls have taken a very bad turn for the worse since the debate. So he's the one that needs another debate as a make good. I think Joe Biden, his people are just like, you don't want to debate? Fine, we won't debate.
Yeah, the debate over debates, yet another. Hey, real quick, I don't want you to give away any state secrets, but is the paper making like huge preparations for what's going to happen on election day and in the weeks after, and all these millions of lawyers standing by, and militias on the street and all kinds of stuff? Is there like a special task force that's preparing to look at that?
Well, we are, yes. I mean, we have some stories in the works about the.
It's not a game plan so much as a piece. I think it ran a couple Sundays ago, just talking to people around the country who are fearing civil war, who are stockpiling food and water, and are anticipating all sorts of horrible social unrest. I mean, we're talking about, we have some stories that are walking up, that are looking at the potential and what states are doing, and various and sundry. And, at a higher level than my own, there are conversations about how we're going to cover this and where we're going to deploy people and what states we should be in and how we go about doing this. I'm old enough to have done Florida, the 2000 recount, and that dragged on for like 7 weeks or so. So the short answer is yes, we're getting ready and figuring out how we can do this and who's going to go where, and hoping that this could all be Y2K all over again. I mean, remember there was all that panic and all that freaking out, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing that nothing terrible came to pass, but you need to be prepared for it, and then hope that you can say, okay, well, that was all a really good drill we ran. Thankfully, we didn't have to implement any of it.
All right, what's your sense of where the Senate races stand today? Chances of the Democrats taking the Senate? Very good, average?
I defer. Yeah, I defer. I defer to the experts who say good to very good. I mean, notably the Cook Political Report, and those guys, Charlie Cook and his crew. They're top-notch analysts, and also to give a shout out to Nathan Gonzalez and his folks at Inside Elections, and they're all saying that Democrats have a better than even chance. And the Cook Report just said South Carolina, Lindsey Graham is in a toss-up. And when South Carolina is a toss-up, on a good night, I mean, you can easily see Democrats getting, they'll need 3 seats if Vice President Biden is elected. Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker. 4 if they were to lose. But, you see folks talking about on a good night, not a good night, on a great night, Democrats could pick up 6 to 9 seats, which would put them way, way over. But I think the odds of them getting to the 3 or 4 they need are pretty darn good at this point.
All right. All right, brother. Thanks so much for checking in. And I think there's a fly on your wall behind you, so be careful out there. I'll talk.
Okay, okay.
Thanks.